Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming along to our workshop on engaging your reader. My name's Kerry. Nice to have you all here with me today, and we're going to get started straight away. So to begin, QUT acknowledges the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nations owners of the lands where QUT now stands. We pay respect to their elders' laws, customs, and creation spirits. We recognise these lands have always been places of teaching, research and learning, and QUT acknowledges the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the QUT community. All right, so I've actually put the slides up already onto Blackboard. I'm just going to pop the link in for you in case you wanted to go and have a look at them now so that you have them there yourself. So as we know, we can see the sessions being recorded. It'll go up either this afternoon or first thing in the morning. You will receive an email to let you know that it's all up there, but the slides are up there now. So this is a workshop today. So we're giving an overview of some writing theory and principles. You're going to do a peer discussion. We also have writing circles, as you know, where we have exemplars and practical activities, and you check your own writing. And our goals for today, we're looking at engaging your reader. So that's really all about being clear and writing in an explicit way. And we're also going to talk a little bit about structuring your sections and chapters and just all of the things that you can put into your writing to help keep the reader on board and understanding what it is that you're doing and why. So we'll have time for Q&A at the end. Quite a lot to get through as usual, but that's all right. I'm going to give you a bit of time. We will have a few activities actually today throughout the session, mostly around popping some of your thoughts into the chat. So please engage. Otherwise, I'm sitting here saying, oh, talking to myself basically. All right. And so remember I said, yes, this is a workshop. We also have a writing circle that's on a sort of a similar theme. I'm going to pop the link into there if you'd like to come along to that one. That's on the 8th of November, talking about coherence. So we'll have exemplars and you'll bring your own writing in that one. I've been putting this slide up all of the time, basically just to remind you that there is a wealth of information there on HiQ. Your candidature is everything to do about your milestones, examination, any sort of that admin stuff. Training and workshops, of course, is where all of the training and workshops that we do, obviously. Engage with industry is about internships. We have a lot of internships that come up, so really great way to get some extra experience in your field, and of course planning your career. We also have a lot of resources around that as well, so please go in and use those resources and see what's here for you. QUT e-prints, another thing that I always tell you about as well, and that's because reading and noticing how other people write in your field is a really good way to improve your writing. So pop into ePrints, you can choose the thesis format, you can put in some keywords around your field of study and, you know, find some other researchers and their thesis and have a look at how they've managed to engage the reader. All right, so just to get you thinking, a couple of questions here. So, you know, we are talking about readers today, obviously. You're a reader as well. So I want a big part of, you know, getting into the reader's shoes is thinking about how you feel when you're reading. So just take 2 minutes right now to jot down a few things or to at least have a think about these two questions. So when you're reading, do you know what parts of the writing or what writing strategies keep you interested and wanting to keep reading and find out more? Or conversely, is there anything that makes you lose interest and stop reading and decide, I won't read this, I'll go on to the next thing? So have a little think for a minute. We will come back to this. So if you can Jot down a couple of points. It'll make it easier for you when we come back to this. So what keeps you engaged as a reader? So sorry, I was on mute. Thanks for letting me know. A lot of good things in the chat, basically saying good flow, information flowing well, narrating the story, coherence, fluent writing. People are saying short sentences. We'll talk about this a bit later. You do need complex sentences, not simple sentences. So we're going to talk about that in a minute if you're not quite sure what I mean by that. All right, let's keep going. Thank you for that. So who are your readers and what do they need from you? This is what we're going to look at. Writing's always about the reader. We're going to think about your readers. And I think you can hear me now, right? Give me a thumbs up. Right, okay. We're going to look at what your readers need. We're going to look about having a purpose, and we're going to look at examiners as well. All right. Writing is always about the reader. I talk about this in every single session that we have, because who are you writing for? You're writing for your audience, for your readers. So effective writers always keep their audience and the purpose for writing in mind. Okay, so you're writing for a reason, aren't you? You're writing to disseminate your research. Initially, your research proposal is to justify and put forward a proposal and for the panel or your supervisors to say, yep, let's keep going, let's do this study, and then you want to disseminate what you found. And it's always the writer's job, okay, to keep the reader engaged. You can't blame the reader if they're not engaged or they're not understanding what you're saying. It's always the writer's job. I like this quote from Highland. He's a seminal researcher around writing and reading. Writing is a social act. Every successful text must display its writer's ability to engage appropriately with his or her audience. And it's an unfolding dialogue. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it is a dialogue with your readers, but not the same kind of dialogue that we have when we're face-to-face and speaking to somebody, which is one of the things that makes it so hard. Everything needs to be in there written so that the reader can know exactly what your meaning is. So let's do an activity. Write in the chat now. Here's 2 examples. Think about who the intended audience is. We've got example A and we've got example B. Any idea about example A, who the potential audience could be for this one? And example B, who do you think the audience is? And maybe even say in the chat why you think this. So example A for medical professionals, yep. Example B. Any idea? Maybe patience, yep. Yeah, so example A, people that have medical training, it assumes there's a level of knowledge, exactly. Example B is potentially more likely lay people, people who don't already know about this information. Good, excellent. All right, let's have a look here. So notice that example A, that's a complex sentence there. So what that means is there's two clauses. So there's the control of cardiac irregularity by calcium blockers depends on the activation of the calcium in the muscle and its interaction with the regulatory proteins in the sarcomere. I don't know if I've said that correctly. And then example B, see how they're simple sentences. So only one verb in a simple sentence. That's how you can tell that it's a simple sentence. So yeah, so B, more likely the general public, isn't it? So simple sentences, it's an expert explaining a complicated process to readers. So it's probably actually a textbook, assuming no prior knowledge and written, even though we've got the vocabulary for the field of study, of course. But yes, it's still very explained in a simple way, so to speak, whereas the other one is assuming that there's quite a lot of knowledge already. So, all right. So then if we're looking then and thinking about readers, who are your readers? What are you thinking when you're, you know, writing your drafts? You can put more than one answer in this poll. Okie doke. That's okay. All right, so you can see there, it's a good spread, isn't it? Supervisory team, journal reviewers, if you're writing a research article or doing by publication. Yep, if you're up, you might be up to some of those milestones, external examiners, researchers in my field. So, you know, it's a combination of all these really, depending on where you're up to. I think for me, at some point, what I would want you guys to be doing is to be thinking about external examiners. Okay, maybe not initially, but ultimately in the end, that's who who you're writing for to get your degree completed. There wasn't any trick answers, by the way. It's basically all of the above, isn't it? All right, so when you're writing, if we look back at all of those options that you had, they're people in your field, aren't they? They're people who already might have a little bit of knowledge of the field. However, they don't have knowledge about your study exactly. And also, you know, you are needing to explain everything about your study in a really clear way, which means, yep, they're going to have some background knowledge, but we're not exactly sure what. So you've really got to explain everything. Don't sort of think about, oh, my reader might know this, so I shouldn't have to explain. Always think, yes, you do have to explain every little thing. You've got to maintain their interest. You have to engage them. And if there's any doubt, which we just said, didn't we, when you were reading, sometimes if there's things missing or you're not quite sure, it's sort of, you do tend to start to lose a bit of interest. So they're not experts in your study. You're the expert. So you need to explain everything about your study so that they can have a deep understanding of it as well. So think about what your readers need from you then. So, yep, they're interested, they're part of your field of study, but they don't know everything about your particular research. So what do you think readers are looking for? Think back to what you said that you were looking for. What do you think readers need from you? Any ideas? Yep, they want to know the novelty of your work. Yep, absolutely. What's significant about your study? Clear information. They want to know the context. Yep, they need a bit of background, don't they? Absolutely. Anything else? They want to know the results. They want to see what you've understood. Yep, they want to know the research aims. Yep, all of those things. So it's a lot, isn't it? Summary of past findings. Yeah, but more than a summary, they want a critical analysis, don't they? So if we boil it down, everything that you put there was absolutely 100% right. So let's think of it this way. They need value. They want to know, what's the value here? Why am I reading this? What am I going to learn that I didn't already know? And they need structure. Okay. So they're the key things we're going to talk about today regarding engaging your reader. So number one, be explicit about the value of your research and the problem that you're investigating. If there's no problem, why are we doing the research? You need them to gain a deep understanding of your study. So no one knows your results. You have a novel contribution, right? So keep them engaged, keep convincing and persuading that they need to know about this research. If they're interested in your field, which they are, they should be interested in your research because it's valuable. And at the same time, your document, the readers need it to be logically structured and coherent. It needs to lead them through that entire big, massive document that you have. Needs to be one whole story, one narrative that goes all the way through from the beginning to the end. So if you can show the value and if you have that clear, logical, coherent structure, you're well on your way to being able to engage a reader and demonstrate the value of your study. So if you don't engage the reader, then your communication, your dialogue that you're putting across, then it's failed, hasn't it? And we don't want that, of course. So it's usually that failing to engage is because the structure is hard to follow. You're jumping around topics and the reader's not quite sure what's going on, and the value and significance of the research isn't clear. Because we said that, didn't we? We want to know the aims, the context, the findings. We want to know where this study is positioned. So keep those two things really clear in your mind when you're the writer, when you're trying to get in the reader's shoes, that you need to be constantly persuading. This is important because, you know, this is valuable information and insight because, and also making sure the structure is logical and clear and the reader can follow along. All right, so linked to the idea of value and structure is the idea of what's the purpose of everything that you are writing right now. And this also, of course, links to what we were saying before about getting in the reader's shoes, understanding your audience. So always understand that every time you're writing a section or a paragraph or a chapter, there's a purpose for it, isn't it? So make sure you fulfill that purpose. So the other way to look at it is the purpose of each section or chapter is to demonstrate something to the reader, right? So very broadly, you're demonstrating your understanding of the field of study, that there's a research problem, and that you have the best research design, the most appropriate and robust one to investigate that problem and to come up with some strategies and insights to help solve the problem. It doesn't mean you're completely solving the problem, okay? You're adding insight that will help towards solving the problem, okay? So always know, okay, I'm writing this section in my lit review. What's my aim here? What's my purpose? So for example, so always be clear about that for yourself, and then you can put that across to the reader and they'll be like, oh, okay, yep, I can see, and you'll have them on board. We are going to look at examples a little later. So have a think about what the purpose is of whatever it is that you're writing right now. Okay, so you could be anywhere in your candidature right now, but you would be working on something, a section or a chapter. Think about what's the purpose, what are you trying to do, and what are you wanting to demonstrate? So I'm going to go first. So I'm putting that in the chat and I'm saying, right, I'm writing a research proposal lit review. The purpose is to demonstrate the research gap and how my study can contribute insight. And by doing that, I'm demonstrating my understanding of the current knowledge in the field and putting myself into that scholarly conversation. Okay, we already know all of these great things. Here's some other insight that we need to help solve this research problem. So if you're writing a section of your introduction, what's the purpose of that section? Is it to give some background? Is it to give an overview of something to do with your research? And what are you demonstrating in that section? Okay, so if someone's writing their introduction in the pre-proposal stage, so the purpose is to define the constructs. Great. So you're demonstrating your understanding of the constructs to do with your research issue. Yep, introduction, overview, contribution, peek into the results. Remembering when you write your introduction, you don't have any results yet, so be careful with that. Exploring beliefs, looking at the knowledge gap, doing the discussion, critical evaluation of the findings and contribution to the field. Nice. Introduction of my proposal. Yeah. Methodology, so stating paradigm, how I'm going to answer the research questions. Nice. Summary of a recent study, part of the literature review. Yep, the purpose is to provide an update of the research that's recently happening to inform the research design. Nice. Putting my research in context and showing the significance. So the reason why you wouldn't put results into the introduction is because when you're writing the introduction and your reader is reading the introduction, you wouldn't have done the research yet, right? You're introducing the research. So unless you're doing something slightly different, generally there would not be any results unless this is an extension of a previous study you've done maybe. But generally you wouldn't have results in an introduction chapter of a thesis. All right, let's have a look at examiners. What do they want from you as the writer? Remember, they're important readers, aren't they? So there has been a little bit of research done around this. There's a couple of papers. This is from an article. One of them is called What Examiners Do. And basically, by the end of the first few chapters, they've made their first impression. Okay, so we need those chapters to be great, to have that positive and good impact. They want to see a clear argument. They want everything explained and justified, which is what we said we need to do, of course, is tell the reader everything. They want consistency and clear links between the thesis parts and the thesis as a whole. Remember, that's coherence, isn't it? The links between that whole document, it has to have consistency all the way through. They don't like errors and they don't like lack of adherence to academic convention. So that's about attention to detail. But good presentation makes the reading enjoyable. That's fairly common sense, isn't it? Of course. So then what does this mean for you then? So knowing that these are the things that the examiners expect, pop into the chat if you can think of one or two aspects of your writing that you know you need to work on to reach these expectations. So I've just put, you can see there what they, those key things: judge your thesis by the end of the first chapters, clear argument, consistency. So do you have any thoughts about the things that you might need to improve? I mean, you've come today to develop your skills. Anything in particular you can think of that you're wanting to improve? Cohesion and coherence. Yep. We'll talk about those in a minute. Anybody else? Anything specific that you're thinking that you might need to improve? Yep. So people are both saying cohesion and coherence. So that's good. You've come to the right place. And, you know, this is a work in progress, you know, your thesis writing. Okay, let's keep going. All right, so some things that we really want to avoid. So how to lose the reader's interest. So the lack of detail in the methods, that's really, really important. It needs to be so, so clear to the point where another researcher should be able to read your methodology chapter and be able to conduct the study as well. Assumptions without evidence, everything you need to have evidence, of course. So initially it'll be evidence from the literature, and then it'll be your evidence that you've collected your data and analyzed. They don't want these silly errors, typos, spelling errors. That one about the research questions seems fairly simple, doesn't it? That you need to answer the research questions clearly, but doesn't always happening. No, never just talking about just the thesis, just a question in the chat. Are we talking purely about the thesis? I have to write for journals. Are we in one? Yep, absolutely. Same for journals, of course. You need all of these things. But even if you are doing by publication, you're still writing a thesis though. So anything that I ever talk about, it is about the thesis, of course, and also any kind of academic writing, which the other thing would be, of course, journal articles. And then obviously with the journal article, it's much more compressed, isn't it? Because it's a lot shorter. Inconsistencies in referencing is another thing to avoid. All right, so remember, you are a reader too. So we did actually touch on this. A lot of you wrote into the chat already about when you read an academic text, what keeps you interested, what makes you lose interest. Does anyone else want to add anything? If you want to turn on your mic or pop into the chat, that's fine. So what I've said there too is if you're not really sure what keeps you interested or what makes you lose interest, what that probably means is to try and take a bit more notice when you read. So when we're talking about writing, as I said before, and I'm talking about engaging your readers, you're a reader as well, okay? You're always going to be a reader, and reading and writing are completely intertwined. If you want to improve your writing, you read more and you notice your writing. That's really, really important. So if you're, especially in your field, notice how writers in your research field write. What sort of strategies do they use? Now, when I'm talking about writing strategies, I'm talking in general. Of course, every field of study might also have additional writing strategies that are important for your field as well. Does anybody want to jump in? Have you got any other thoughts? I know we sort of discussed this before, didn't we? So I might keep moving, but definitely this is something really important to think about when you're reading from now on. I want you to really notice how you're feeling as the reader and why. What is it that made you lose interest, or what is it that made you interested and wanting to find out more and keep reading? Yeah, so someone has said something that makes them lose interest is too many technical terms and the long sentences. Yeah. Okay, now I don't usually play videos in my sessions, but we are going to watch one for about 10 minutes or so. As you watch, write down anything that you found interesting, because you're going to discuss that with your peers shortly. Someone's added in the chat that complicated structure is bad when they're a reader. Yep, absolutely. We need it to be simple and clear and logical, don't we? And lead the reader through. So the video is about writing effectively, and this is he's the director of the University of Chicago's writing program. We're going to start about 4 minutes in, and basically he has just been saying that writing about research is high-level writing, requires writers to focus on the reader to get the value of their research across. And he's just about to talk about why readers stop reading. Oh, so I just share my screen. All right. Can you see the screen okay? Let me know if you can't hear it. All right, I'm just about to press play now. Can you hear okay? Yep, perfect. I just pressed pause, but good.
You are not like
So you couldn't hear it? Okay, that's, yeah, all right. Let me just go back.
vocabulary. You are what we call expert writers. What this means is not that you are necessarily expert at writing, although you may be extremely good at writing. But what it means is that you are writing about the subject at which you have expert knowledge. You are not like high school students who are using their writing to introduce themselves to something at a fairly basic level. You are operating at the most sophisticated levels. When I work with faculty on this and other campus, I'm working with people who are, after all, on the frontiers of knowledge. They're thinking stuff nobody's thought before. This is very hard stuff. So here's what you're doing. You are thinking about your world in very difficult ways. This is a terrifically good thing, and it's the source of most of the value of your work. Now, you are also writing about that world. And this is where it starts, problem starts to arise. Unlike a journalist, almost surely you are using your writing process to help yourself think. In other words, the thinking that you're doing is at such a level of complexity that you have to use writing to help yourself do your thinking. This is quite different from high school students. My high school teachers told me, Larry, there are two different processes. First, there's a thinking process, then there's a writing process. I had a teacher who said to me, you are not ready to write your first word until you are finished thinking. And she said to me, to prove this to you, I'm going to have you, whenever you turn in a paper, I'm going to have you turn in the outline you used to do your thinking. It's not a problem for me. First, I wrote the paper, then I wrote the outline. But I thought I was the only one. I thought everybody else, when they did this thinking, just, thought it till they were done. And then their essay, like Athena, burst from their forehead onto the page. I was trying to keep it secret that I didn't work that way. Nobody works that way. It doesn't mean you don't have outlines or good idea. It doesn't mean you don't take notes. It's a good idea. It doesn't mean you don't have other ways of thinking, but you are using your writing to help yourself think. You don't do this for most people, you cannot think at the level you need. Quite different, say, from a journalist who's sitting down writing. Journalist is not using the writing process to think up new ideas about the world. You are. This means you have a very different set of writing challenges than anybody else has. This is a course about those challenges. The program is about that. Because here's the challenge. This grant proposal, this article, this dissertation proposal, this book, you actually generate it on the horizontal axis. You actually generate the text while you are doing your thinking. But then you're going to send this text out to readers. And the readers are going to look through that text. And if you've done your job, they're going to change the way they see the world. So here's the problem symbolically. You actually generate a text on the horizontal axis, but whether it does its job depends on the vertical axis. And here's the problem. Very predictably, experts use language in one set of patterns to do their thinking, but those very same experts read with a different pattern. So here's what happens. You have used your text as you must use it to help yourself think, but you're going to use writing patterns and language patterns that interfere with the way your readers read when they read. even when those readers are also other experts. So you are interfering with their reading process when you're writing. I promise you, you are. What happens to readers when you do that? The last thing they're going to do is they're just going to stop. What happens before then? What leads up to that stopping? You're absolutely right, they stop. But let's talk a little bit about what leads up to it. You're writing like this, they're reading like this. What's the first thing that happens to them? This has never happened to you? Right, so they misunderstand. That's the second thing that happens. The second thing that happens is you interfere, they do not understand. What's the first thing that happens? They're skipping stuff. I'm going to put that in the bucket of stopping. They just stop. Either in little ways or big ways. They stop. Right? What's the first thing? This has never happened to you? You've never tried to read something which was clearly not written in the way you're trying to read it? I bet that in the last week you've read stuff that was not written in the way you are seeking to read it. What's the first thing that happens to you? I'm going to put that in the doesn't understand bucket. See what I mean? I'm being, pardon me? The first thing that happens is you slow down. And rereading is a version of slowing down. You either read more slowly the first time or you have to read and reread and reread and reread. You slow down. We're going to get back to why this matters in a minute. Second, you don't understand. Third, you get aggravated. Then you're done. Right? Done. Now, when this happens to you and you reread and reread, why did you do that? Why didn't you just stop? That's exactly right. What do you suppose happens if they don't need to read it? Problem is, forgive me for saying this, you have no idea how to handle that problem. You don't. You really don't. Why not? How many things have you written in your life? Imagine the number of academic-y stuff. Forget the letters and all that kind of stuff. Academic-y stuff. Order of magnitude. I don't know. 300? 300 texts, let's make it up. 500? 1,000? I don't know how many it is. Make it up. Make it up. 200. 200. 100. About 100. She's better with 100. You've written 100 academic texts in your life. Did the readers stop reading them? Did they? No, why not? They were grading it. Let's be a little more crude about it. They were paid. Oh my God, guys, academics get all freaked out when I talk about money. I said, guys, I got news for you. Your teachers read your stuff because they were paid to what? Were your teachers reading your text to think about the world? That's not what they're paid to do. Why were your teachers reading your text? Why were people paying them to do it? To change the way they see the world? No, why? Teachers read texts because they are paid to care about the students. You've learned to write in a system where you're writing to readers who are paid to care about you. That will stop. That will stop. Right? That will stop. The rules that you've learned about writing, the rules that were generated in the system where you are writing to somebody who's paid to care about you. That's over. In the world beyond school, I call it a real world, but I'm not sure it's real. It's just the world beyond school. They're not paid to care about you. Why are they reading? Why are they reading your stuff? Why will they read it? The journals. Their colleagues. Because they think it's valuable to them. How much of student work is valuable to the faculty to which the students are writing? And by the way, some faculty who said to you, "Oh, you look so bad, thank you," they were lying. No, they were lying. It was valuable to them, but it was valuable to them because they learned that people misunderstood things in ways they had no idea people could misunderstand things. No. Faculty sometimes look at me and say, "Oh, no, Larry, you're wrong. No, student writing is actually professionally valuable." I say, "Then did you publish it?" Then if you didn't, it's plagiarism. And they say, "Well, no, actually, it wasn't that valuable." Look, here's the problem you've got. Yeah, your writing needs to be clear, sure. Your writing needs to be organized. The rules that govern this are not what you think they are. In fact, they're not rules. Yes, your writing needs to be persuasive. This is way more important than this, but more than anything else, from now on, your writing needs to be valuable. Because if it's not that, nothing else can. It makes zero difference. Faculty come into my office, and forgive me for the drama, but in my office, there's 2 chairs in the writing corner. I have a chair at my desk, and then there's 2 chairs over here. There's my chair, and then there's the writer's chair. And next to the writer's chair is a box of Kleenex. And I'm not kidding. Because I have people coming to me saying, they're not accepting my proposal. They're not accepting my draft. Like a faculty who come in and say they're not publishing my work. And of course, there's Kleenex there because careers depending on it. And sometimes it's because it's not clear, and sometimes because it's not organized, and sometimes because it's not persuasive, but overwhelmingly, it's because it's not valuable. And the other stuff doesn't matter.
Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed that little snippet. As I said, it goes for more than an hour. It really is a good video. But now we are at the time for our peer discussion. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. We're going to start looking at some strategies now. We're all set up. We know what's required. We know what you need for the quality. So let's look at how we're going to do that and achieve that. And just a reminder, if you haven't put your student ID in the chat box, if you could do that, please, just so we can record your attendance. All right. Now, sorry, this is a bit fuzzy, but this is a good little insight, I guess. I don't understand why my grade was so low. How did I do on my research paper? Actually, you didn't turn in a research paper. You turned in a random assemblage of sentences. In fact, the sentences you apparently kidnapped in the dead of night and forced into this violent and arbitrary plan of yours clearly seemed to be placed on the pages against their will. Reading your paper was like watching unfamiliar, uncomfortable people interacting at a cocktail party that no one wanted to attend in the first place. You didn't submit a research paper, you submitted a hostage situation. So we want to avoid that as much as we can. This is about undergraduate writing, by the way, but still, we want to avoid it. All right, this is all the things we're going to look at. It's a lot, isn't it? Seems like a lot, but it all links together. It all builds on everything. And keep in mind what we said at the beginning. The main things we're talking about here is structure and persuading about the value of the study, okay? Your structure is what will give you the coherence and give the reader the ability to follow what you're saying. All right, so a lot of things. Let's keep moving through each of these points now. So writing about research, it's a process. There is an assumption that everybody knows how to read and write. It's a basic skill. It's easy. Okay, well, it's not so simple when we're writing about research, is it? Because there's a lot of things going on. You've got the way that a thesis is expected to look like, of course, or a research article. There's a lot of rules. There's discourses related to your field of study. You've got those strict deadlines. You need to build your confidence in your research skills and your writing, of course. And there's always that thing in our minds is, will anyone else care? Yes, they're going to care because you're going to be very explicit and clear about the value of your research. So while we're talking about all these effective writing strategies, it takes time to achieve that quality of writing that you're aiming for. Be patient. It's okay. You're not meant to know everything yet. You're doing a training degree. And as we said, there's a lot of things that you're learning, not just about writing, about doing your research project, of course, all very important skills. So be patient and seek feedback. That's always going to be the key. So a starting point is to understand and then implement these mechanics of effective writing. And we touched on this. A few of you said that this is what you're here for, about coherence and cohesion. So basically, these overlap at the paragraph level. Okay, so the cohesion is the micro level. It's each single paragraph. Okay, is it logical? Does each paragraph lead the reader through with transition signals? Are the sentences correctly structured? Is the grammar correct? Is the vocabulary appropriate? Is there a clear topic sentence? So that's your cohesion. It's your paragraphing. Each paragraph on its own, does it say that main point and explain it in a clear way? Your coherence, as we said, it's the macro level. It's the big picture. It's the whole document. It's the sections. It's the chapters. And then what makes up those sections, of course, is the paragraphs, isn't it? So that's how the overlap is, isn't it? It's at that paragraph level. But when I talk about coherence, I'm talking about the macro level. I'm talking about whole sections, whole chapters, and the document as a whole. All right. So these separate the two of them out. Think of them separately. Okay, so when you're working on the cohesion, you're at the paragraph level. When you're working on the coherence, you're working at the bigger level of whole sections, whole chapters, and the document as a whole. It's very hard to work on both at the same time. When I'm talking about working on them, I'm talking about your planning, your revising, your proofreading. So coherence is that big picture. It's the structure and the flow, and constantly bringing the reader back to the research problem, the aims, and the value. Every section and every chapter, you have a purpose, you're demonstrating something, and it always needs to come back to explaining how it links to the problem, the aims, or the value. Okay, so everything is organized and connected to persuade the reader that this is an urgent research problem, and your study will or has already yielded the findings to provide insight into that problem and answer the research questions. Okay. So what it means is we always need to keep the big picture in mind. Yes, you're working on, a part of a section, maybe you're writing your paragraphs, you're getting all your main points there, but at some point you need to take a step back, and then rather than focusing on that paragraph level, we need to focus on the whole section as a whole, chapter as a whole. So one way to do that is think about the research project from start to finish. So that's from introduction to conclusion, and have a little bit of a plan about what that might look like. You will need to tweak it later, and that's okay, but it's good to have a plan to start with. Trial new strategies. If you get some feedback that says about a section that it's not flowing, the points aren't quite clear, go back and have another look, problem solve some different strategies to make those arguments more clear. And then between chapters and between sections, we need those connections. You're scaffolding, you're leading the reader through. Okay, then of course, within each section, you've got those individual paragraphs. So there's where your attention to detail and your micro focus comes in. But as I said, it can be really difficult to be thinking of the big picture and the paragraphing at the same time. So paragraphing, remember, the cohesion is the grammar, the vocabulary, and the structure and flow of individual paragraphs, right? And it can be difficult to do both at the same time. So divide your revising and proofreading into big picture, coherence, and the paragraphing, which is your cohesion. Now, we actually, as you know, We actually have the coherence writing circle that's on in a couple of weeks. We have one on cohesion as well. And I thought that I had that. Oh, yes, I do. I'll give you a link to Blackboard. So if you want to have a look at cohesion more closely, you can go in and have a look at those resources. All right. So when we're thinking about that big picture, the coherence, writing that engages the reader is going to have those clear subheadings and sections that communicate and explain a key idea or a concept and all the minor points in between amongst that concept. So as we said, you've got to focus on the macro and the micro, but if you can do it separately, it's going to make it a little bit easier for you. Everything needs to connect, doesn't it? Between your paragraphs, sections, chapters, the whole document. And we need to constantly persuade that the research is valuable. We need to constantly justify what we're doing as well. So really, one of your key strategies, and we always talk about this, it's those messy drafts. That's what Larry was saying in the video, wasn't he? That writing is a product of your thinking. So you're going to have those messy drafts that are a little bit all over the place. And then we come back and revise and make them flow in a more logical way. But you need to get those thoughts down. Okay, so when you're thinking about writing, there's two things. The key, there's fluency and there's accuracy, right? Now, accuracy is about that cohesion. It's the grammar. It's making sure that what your meaning is clear. Fluency is your ability to pump out a document that is what, 80,000 words potentially, for your final thesis, maybe more. Even a research proposal is a long document, isn't it? So if you're constantly worrying about the accuracy and making sure every sentence is perfect and every word is perfect, you're not going to get those drafts pumped out. So don't worry, those messy drafts are meant to be messy. They're about all your thoughts. Then you come back and revise again. Then you proofread, then you get feedback, then you come back again and improve and improve. So, you know, try to sort of give yourself permission to have a messy draft, okay, to start off any section. And then you'll always come back and make it better and better. So that messy draft writing time is really important, and it's separate from proofreading. A good way too with those messy drafts is just leave them for a few days. You'll come back with fresh eyes and you'll really be able to go to knuckle down and figure it out and say, okay, good ideas that I have here, let's put them in a logical way. And when you're proofreading, which you should always do before you seek feedback, is a good tip, print if you can and read aloud, and then you'll hear when there's something not quite right. Okay, so if we start from the beginning, I know you're not writing from your title at the very beginning, but maybe you've already got one. Put a bit of thought into your thesis title. That's the beginning to engage the reader, isn't it? That's the first thing they'll see. Then they'll go to the abstract and then they'll go to the document. Same with a research article. They'll start with the title, then they'll go to the abstract. So write in the chat, which one of these titles do you think is the clearest and the most engaging? Now, obviously, we may not be interested in these topics, so I don't want you to think about it like that. I want you to think about it in as far as which one is engaging us and hooking us in. So some people are saying 3. We've got a 2. Yep. So are you thinking those 2 because they're short? Maybe. Someone has said number 1. Yeah, so 1 is more clear. Yeah, and what makes it more clear is we know exactly what we're going to find out about. We get a really good insight into the topic of the research, planning for pediatric palliative care services in Queensland, characteristics, demographics, and health needs of children and young people with life-limiting conditions. Very, very clear. We even know the scope, don't we? Now, I'm not saying 2 and 3 are bad in any way. However, they're very open. They're not specific at all, really. So it does, what we would have to do is actually go in to figure out exactly what this is about. Whereas example 1, we know from the very beginning. So, so what does this mean for you? I would try to lean towards example 1. Obviously, see what your supervisors say, but the more information you can put into that that title, the more the reader's going to be like, oh, okay, I know exactly what this is about. I'm going to go in and find out more. So you need to inform and persuade, but about what? What are you persuading about? You got it. It's the value of your research every single time. Why do we care? All right. Make your research problem clear. That's first step. And then that leads to the value. There's a problem. We need insight to help fix this problem. We want you to tell your research story. Okay. You've got a narrative. That's how you engage the reader to keep them interested. And we want you to take a stance, have a clear argument. Be explicit and use evidence to support your argument, and be assertive, be punchy. We're going to look at some examples in a minute. So starting with the research problem, as we said before, if there's no problem, why are you doing a study? Okay, so this is really linking to the idea of the value. Where there's a problem, where we're getting insight, that's leading to your value. They usually go hand in hand. Now, your research problem isn't your research gap. They're two different things. Research gap means we need, there's things that we don't know about a research problem. So work really hard to persuade the reader that this is their problem. This is their field of study. They should want to know about this. It's an urgent problem. It's challenging. It's impacting on these specific stakeholders. Maybe it's costing money, but the problem could potentially be resolved through the insights that your research is going to yield. So at the very beginning point, sometimes it's hard to articulate exactly what the problem is. So it might take a bit of time. It might be a process. You might need to get some feedback. So work hard, because that's going to be a real key to persuading about the value. So throughout your document, so this, remember, we're talking about coherence, be explicit. Always, every time, tell the reader, if you give them some information, tell them why you've given it. This is important because this demonstrates, this suggests, this is linked to the research aims, whatever it might be. You need to give them insight into the different perspectives. You need to start giving answers. Maybe you're going to improve best practice. Maybe it's to save time, money, to improve some kind of outcomes for stakeholders. Whatever it is, remind the reader over and over again in every section. Now, not necessarily every paragraph, but definitely every section. You need to always come back and say, okay, these things that have been discussed here are important because they demonstrate something to do with your study. So as we said, you've got a research story. So it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. But it's not fiction, so there's no surprises. So again, what I keep saying regarding coherence is be explicit and clear from the very, very beginning, from that very first paragraph. What's the research topic? Why is this important? What's the problem? And why do we need to fix this problem? So your introduction chapter, you're starting that thread. You're putting in all of the important information very broadly. Then in the literature review, you're going to go into more detail and you have the evidence from the literature. And then your methodology, you're explaining and justifying how you're going to get that insight. Remember, it's a dialogue. You are talking to the reader in a clear and engaging way so that they're reading along going, I get it. Oh, yes, interesting, interesting. I can't wait to find out more. So once you've got those first 3 chapters going, the story keeps going, doesn't it? The results, okay, you're going to say, okay, this was what the data collection and analysis yielded. Here's the main results or findings. Then you're getting to the really important bit that the reader's hanging out for. They want to know, okay, so what does this mean? So you are placing your findings into that scholarly conversation. Then, of course, you got your conclusion and your recommendation. So think of it as a story where you're leading the reader through. You have a very clear beginning. Hey, there's a research problem. And then you have a really clear ending. Hey, here's some recommendations to help solve this research or contribute to this research problem to help make it better. All right. So examiners want consistency and clear links between all of these parts. Start the story, tell the story, engage the reader, and finish the story. Now, in your conclusion, you're probably going to say, hey, we need to do more research. That's okay, but you can still conclude this particular research. Okay. And that's going to happen in the conclusion. Give the reader something at the end so that they can see a very clear conclusion from your beginning. So I've been talking about taking a stance, haven't I? So this is to do with your argument. So if you sit on the fence, if you know that saying about sitting in the middle, not going one way or the other, it's boring. You need to show your voice, show your critical analysis, and take a stance and make an argument. When you're talking about previous studies, don't just say someone did this, and someone did something else. That's boring. It's words on a page. You need analysis in there as well to say someone did this, good study, good methodology, but there's still things we don't know because maybe they didn't have a very big research sample or whatever it is. Now, that doesn't mean that that previous study is bad or anything like that, because you can't research every little thing. It's just showing your critical analysis. Yep, good insight, but we need to know more. All right, so you need to bring the audience into what your perspective is. What's your stance on this? What's your argument regarding the research field? So don't sort of sit on the fence. Make sure you make your argument really clear. And we're going to look at some examples of that. And also, you know, I know that this document is huge, but think about all of the effort and time you've put into designing your study, undertaking your study. Now you're disseminating those findings. So you really want to put that thought and care into the document as well, so that you can get all that important you know, all those findings through to the reader in a clear way, so you persuade them that you've made this great contribution to the field. All right, so what do we mean by making an argument? Let's have a look. So it's a discourse intended to persuade. We keep coming back to that, don't we? We're persuading. It expresses a point of view intended to influence. It's about establishing a position through rational support. What's the rational support? It's your evidence, whether it's from the literature initially and then from your own findings as well. So you make your argument through critical analysis and expressing your voice. So if you have a paragraph, whether it's methodology, lit review, or wherever, if you have a paragraph and it's citation after citation after citation, where's your voice? What does this mean? Okay, so I never want to see a paragraph where it's just citation. Somewhere in there, you need to put your voice. What does this mean? What are the implications of this information? And why is it important for us as the reader to know? So we can also talk about it as being descriptive and being critical. Yes, you need to be descriptive. Of course, that's all the information, all the background, all the context that you're giving us. But the critical voice transforms that into your argument, which is how you're going to persuade the reader of the value of the study. So see how everything's overlapping, isn't it? All right, we're going to look at some examples. And before we do, think of it like this. All right. So you're establishing your position. So you state your argument, explain, giving reasons and evidence. If there's contentions, which there may well be in your field, it's really important that strengthens your argument by acknowledging other ideas and other perspectives. It doesn't decrease your argument, it increases it because it shows that you're aware that there are other perspectives, okay? And then once you've provided the evidence, acknowledge the contentions, then you need to explicitly say to the reader, this is significant because. Don't make them do any hard work. Don't make them guess to be like, okay, I feel like that's an important thing. State it. Tell them what to think and why we should care. So the significance of your argument is the value. It demonstrates your critical voice, which is what the examiner, the reader, is looking for, and it engages them because you're going in more deeply rather than the surface descriptive part of it. You're going in deeper. And this is what you need to do as a researcher, isn't it? You need to show your critical voice and write in a critical way. All right, so that was all a lot of information. Let's have a look at some examples. So this is what I want you to be looking for. I'm just going to pop it into the chat. Do you see an argument? Do you see some reasons, evidence, contentions? Let's have a look. So the sentences are numbered. TV can have harmful psychological effects on children because when they are constantly exposed to violent images, they come to think violence is natural. Children who are often exposed tend to adopt the values of what they see, and constant exposure to violent images makes children unable to distinguish fantasy from reality. Smith found children aged 5 to 7 who watched more than 3 hours of violent television a day were 25% more likely to say that what they saw on television was really happening. However, some children who watch violent entertainment might already be attracted to violence. For example, Jones found children with no predisposition to violence were as attracted to violent images as those with a violent history. Right, what do you think? Do you see an argument? Do you see reasons, evidence, contentions? You should, because they're all there. Any ideas? Not sure. Argument in sentence 1. Yes. Yep. 3 is the evidence. Yep. Perfect. Excellent. All right. Let's have a look. Yep. So we've got an argument. We've got 3 reasons there. We've got some evidence from the literature. There's a contention in there as well. Okay. Good information. Who cares? So what? I don't know. Do we care that kids who watch violence on TV might become violent? I guess we do, but are we persuaded by this text to care at the moment? Not really. We've got good information though. All right. What about sentence 6? This contention in current knowledge indicates the need for further investigation into the impact violent TV images have on children to provide parents with evidence-based guidance on how best to manage their children's TV habits. Okie dokie. So just by adding this sentence, it starts to persuade us to go, oh, okay, we have stakeholders here. Yeah, parents might want to manage this, mightn't they? Now, of course, we need more evidence and we need more persuasion and we need more information, but at least this starts to get us thinking. So it's explicit, isn't it? We could already tell that there was a contention in current knowledge. We knew that. We worked that out for ourselves. But by being explicit and leading the reader through and telling the reader what you would like them to take from this information, that is you're beginning to persuade, right? So it's those sorts of sentences that are super, super important and give us the start to the thread of the significance and the value. Yeah, still not too much evidence. This is 1 paragraph though, remember? We're going to have, there would be more paragraphs and it would continue on. This is just a tiny snapshot. All right, so as well as those really important sentences that state the significance, try to be punchy. Now, punchy means strong vocabulary and active sentences. So Hedging, I'm not saying you can't hedge, so saying might, may, could. It is appropriate at times, but not always. So there are times when you need to be bold and assertive and trust yourself and go hard, persuade, convey your voice and your critical analysis. So words do matter. So here's an example of it in a conclusion. The study findings expose inconsistencies, or the study findings may have exposed. Now, depending on your field of study, where you are in your document, saying may have might be appropriate, but think about it. Could you go stronger? When you find yourself hedging, think about if you can go stronger or not. You might have to check with your supervisors, but there are times when you should be going hard and punchy. Any ideas? Oh, we're going to look at some examples actually. So see if you can see some examples of being punchy. So this is a thesis investigating international students' literacy and learning experiences. Let's see if there's any sentences in there that you can see where there's an example of being punchy. So being strong and clear and explicit. Yep, sentence 6, absolutely. So strong vocabulary is how we're punchy, and also by being explicit. Yep, sentence 3. Yep, let's have a look. Expose inconsistencies. This problem persists. That's a strong word, isn't it? Yep. University disciplines do not adequately address. This view is unsound. Support continues to be delivered outside the disciplines. This is despite. Must expedite. So the use of must. But again, I want you to be careful. You can't always use the words must, can you? And sometimes you need to say may, should, all right? So you'll need to figure out when you can be punchy. Any ideas? So that was a conclusion. Any ideas about when else you might be punchy? Definitely in your conclusion, right? If it's appropriate, but when else could you be punchy to demonstrate your critical voice? Any ideas? Recommendations in your discussion, in your intro, when you're describing the problem, yes, at the end of each chapter, when summarizing 100%, when you're justifying your methods, there's another one, right? Be strong, trust yourself. You've done all this hard work, put it through to the reader, let them know, hey, I've worked hard on this, so you better believe me and I'm going to persuade you. All right, let's have a look at some more strategies. This time we're looking at the structure to keep your reader engaged. We're looking at sections and chapters. That's what we're looking at. We've touched on these, but we're going to be a bit more explicit about how you can implement these strategies. So the common thread, right? That is your research problem and the significance. I want to see in every single section something that comes back to the problem, the aims, the value, okay, or the research questions or whatever it might be. So have these things written and printed and posted on your wall, so at every single time you know exactly, so that when you're writing and doing your descriptive information, your background or whatever it might be, you can say to yourself, okay, I've written these couple of paragraphs about this main point. So what? Who cares? Why is this important? And then you can look at your aims, your problem, your research questions, and the value, and see where it fits. Okay, and then you can write one of those sentences. This is important. This is significant. This shows that we need to have further understanding. We need insight, whatever it might be. Okay, keep reminding the reader about what you're doing and why you're doing it. They will forget. It is a big document. If you're writing a research article, a lot smaller document, isn't it? It's very much compressed, but each section, I still would need you to come back and keep telling the reader why you gave them this information. What has it got to do with anything? Why do we care about this information you've given? So common thread, keep it in your mind, stick it on your wall, have it regularly in your sections. You've got a puzzle, okay? It's not a puzzle to, well, it might still be, but ultimately you've worked out your puzzle. So that's why you need the common thread to link all those puzzle pieces together. Why? For the reader. Keep them on board. Remember what Larry said, we don't want them getting aggravated and lost. We need to keep them on board and understanding where we're up to. You need to put the pieces of the puzzle together for them. Don't keep your reader waiting. I want to know within the very first couple of, well, that first paragraph of every section, I want to know, what's this section about? Why is it important? How does it link to your study? And what are you going to tell me? What are your main points? Okay, need to have that every time. So you're stating the aim and the function. What are your aims? Why is this information important? And what's the structure? Let's look at a couple of examples. So as we're looking, what do you see here? Do you see all of these main things we need in a beginning chapter, paragraph of a section, sorry. This chapter presents the phase 1 quantitative survey findings for this study. The findings were derived from the results of a questionnaire that was used to explore blah, blah, blah. The survey data was analysed using SPSS. The first aim of the survey was this. There was 2 other objectives. The following sections are going to tell you this and some other things as well. So what do we see? Function of the chapter, reminder of the aims, a reminder of where it fits into the study, and a little sentence about the chapter structure. So I want you to make sure you have these all of the time. This orientates the reader, keeps them on board so they're not lost and they're like, oh, okay, yep, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember you said you were going to use SPSS. Okay, great. Thanks for the reminder. Right. So you've reminded them at the start of the chapter and the start of every section. Keep on reminding them. So at the end of a section or chapter, now it doesn't have to be a whole stack of paragraphs. It might just be a few sentences. It might be one paragraph, depends how much you've told them. Restate, clearly explain again, hey, all these points I just gave you in this section are important because they needed to fulfill this purpose, because I needed you to understand this stuff, because it links to my aim, my problem, my research population, whatever it is, okay? You might even want to say to them as well at that ending, that sort of end of a section, to lead them into the next section. Depends if it's necessary. But the key thing is keep reminding them is, hey, remember my argument? Here's another point. Here's some more evidence. Here's some more justification. Here's why it's significant. So what's the moral here? Do not make your reader work hard. You're working hard. I know you're all working so hard. Keep it up. We've got this dialogue with the reader who is not sitting with you when they read it. Everything has to be explicit and clear. Don't make them guess. Don't make them think, I think I get you. They must get you, right? You are demonstrating that you are an excellent researcher who has made this great contribution, a small contribution, but a great contribution to the scholarly conversation. Okay, so just another example. All right, is there a so what in here? Can you see something? Can you see the research topic? Can you see the research problem? Research gap? What do you see? Now, we don't know anything about this study yet, but in one paragraph, we're getting a bit of an idea, aren't we? Group discussions are valuable methods of engaging students with material and teaching interpersonal communication skills. Despite this, students are often resistant. Wow. They prefer just to listen. One suggestion to encourage positive student attitudes towards group discussions is to directly inform them of its benefits. I did that, didn't I? Did it work? Maybe. However, empirical data on the effectiveness of this approach are lacking. The purpose of this study was to examine something. Increased understanding provides educators with evidence to improve pedagogical practice and increase student engagement. Such insight is significant because learning is a social practice. Wow. Okay, so 5 is a topic. Yeah. 4 is the gap. Yep. A lot of stuff fit into one paragraph, hasn't it? So of course there's going to be more information. Absolutely. But in one paragraph, look at how much by being explicit, by being clear. Look at the beautiful linking. Group discussions are valuable. Despite this, however, such insight is significant. So it's there, isn't it? The so what is there. So a really good example of what I'm talking about leading the reader through and making sure you're explicit and clear and keeping them reminded as to what you're doing and why. Now that sentence number 7, that's the key so what, isn't it? Now, I'm not saying you have to have those sorts of sentences in every paragraph. You may not be able to because you're building your point, you're explaining, you're giving your evidence, but I really would want within each section these kinds of sentences regularly, every few paragraphs. Keep the reader persuaded, keep reminding them this is important because we need more insight into this research topic for this reason. Explicit, clear, who cares? We all should care, and persuade them, right? Persuade your reader with those explicit sentences. Okay, so you're working hard, you're writing, using all these effective writing practices. What's next? Seek feedback. It's essential. Don't be scared. Don't give your messy drafts. Give your slightly polished messy drafts, okay? Then reflect on the feedback, the better you'll become. I know that it sucks when we get negative feedback. Remember, that's about the document. It's not about you. Remember as well, this is a training degree. You are learning a lot of skills. You're not expected to be perfect at the moment. You're building on your skills. So the feedback is how you're going to improve on that. So develop your feedback literacy. That's an excellent strategy for you to get that coherence and to engage your reader. Get feedback from readers. So be active in the feedback process. You can put a track change in the document or tell the person who you're sending it to and say, hey, are you convinced? Are you persuaded? Is my argument clear? Can you see the significance of this information? Ask them explicitly and they'll say yes or they'll say no. If they say no, you've got some strategies that you know you can implement to improve. So as well as your supervisory team and anyone else who you can rope into giving you some feedback, come along to our peer feedback sessions and get your peers to give you some actionable feedback on those written drafts. We've got 3 left for 2022. So please come along. I've just put the link to register. I'd love to see you there. So just a few final tips before we get to our Q&A. All right, so attention to detail. A lot of what we've talked today about is the big picture, isn't it? You know, the logical structure, being clear, being persuasive. But of course, attention to detail is important. Each paragraph needs to be clearly written and grammatically correct with the right vocabulary. And of course, you've got your academic conventions, your referencing style. So, you know, that's different again to the actual writing, isn't it? You've also got all of the conventions. You've got to make sure that the spelling and grammar is correct when you're proofreading. Because don't forget, examiners are not just examiners, by the way. Anyone who's reading is going to be annoyed and distracted by errors. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to have a few errors. Of course, you're going to miss some things. Again, that's why you're getting feedback. but you can still make sure that there's not a whole stack of spelling errors in particular. So make sure you double check all of that before you seek feedback. Okay, when you're proofreading, we skip through quickly oftentimes because we know the argument. It's clear to you, you know why this is important and significant. But if you get feedback that says, hey, I can't quite get what you're doing here, I'm a little bit lost, or I'm not persuaded, you've got to believe them. They are correct. Don't get upset, just fix it. Maybe you need to reword, maybe you need to add a sentence or an example or a table or a figure. It's your job to make all the connections for the reader. What did we say? Don't make the reader work hard, and go back to those key points. How have you done with explaining the value, and how is your structure going? Okay, so they could be some things you need to tweak if the feedback is, I'm not quite getting it yet. So become an expert when you're proofreading. As I said, try to separate your coherence and your cohesion out, do them separately, print, read aloud, make notes, take your time. If you're in a hurry, you're going to miss things. If you're reading on the screen, you're going to miss things. That's why I encourage you to print. And also, by now, you should have an idea of the things you're needing to improve, the aspects of your writing. So look out for those. If you already know that you make some kind of error in a grammar point, maybe tense, let's say, look at all your verbs. Are you in the right tense? If you know that sometimes you skip ahead and, you know, don't sort of lead the reader through enough, you jump topics, check for that and make sure that you haven't done that and you've led the reader through nicely. This is a really, really good resource. So if you haven't gone into the Manchester Phrase Bank, I really encourage you to do so. They have a lot of good help for those so what sentences and how to start them off. All right. And all different parts of your document as well. So I encourage you to use the Manchester Phrase Bank. And I think lastly, stay positive. You know, the answers will come. This is, you know, this is a big effort that you're putting in here. And no matter where you're up to in your candidature, there's challenges, isn't there? And so be confident, you know, stay passionate, stay motivated. You will get there. You will find the answers. Yes, there's going to be a whole stack of revisions and drafts, but that's part of the process. You will get the document where you want it to be. So that commitment and practice and that attitude that you've had towards your research itself and undertaking the study because you know you're really passionate and motivated and interested in this research topic, you then need to bring it back to your writing. Not everybody is a brilliant writer, right? Very few people are. And even those who are brilliant writers, imagine how many drafts they've done. We can think about fiction. We can think about our seminal authors in our field of study. They didn't just sit down and just go writing this perfect manuscript. Took them a lot of time and a lot of feedback. Okay, so you will get there. Stay positive, keep coming to the classes, come to the peer feedback, engage with your peers, you know, you will get there. You started this journey, this candidature with a passion. It's a training degree. You're learning so many things. And please trust me, all the challenges that you overcome will make you stronger, a better researcher, a better writer, and you'll be able to look back with such a sense of pride of what you've achieved. So don't forget, the slides are already up there. There was a lot of content today, I know. There always is, because I've got 100 million things to tell you. So the slides are already up there. The recording will be up there either later today or in the morning. And I'll send you an email. And, oh, yeah, if you want to know more, this is what we've got. We've still got quite a lot coming up till the end of the year. You can see there, discussion, coherence, a little bit more. So in that writing circle, that one on Tuesday, 8th of November, we'll have exemplars, the conclusion one as well, and the discussion. There's a writer's block workshop, writing up your thesis proofreading, So please come along. Love to see you. And the ones down the bottom there, they're ones that we've already had for this semester. So they're done now. But all the resources are up on Blackboard. Takeaways: don't make the reader work hard. Okay. You have to work hard. Be explicit. Say everything that is in your mind. Put it on the paper, right? Now, if you're told, you're not thinking critically, that's not right. You are thinking critically. I know that you are. Demonstrate your critical thinking by putting it on the paper. Then they can see that you're thinking critically. Think about those mechanics: coherence, cohesion, connect your main points, your sections and your chapters. You've got that beautiful narrative, that beautiful story. Your readers are interested in it. I know what Larry said. Some of them are being paid, I know, but not for your research articles, right? Which are going to come from your thesis. And also, what's the point of your thesis? To graduate, get your degree, and to get your research out there. All right. Proofread and seek feedback. They're my main takeaways. There was a lot, wasn't it? All right. I'd love to hear what you think about today's session. You can use the QR code. You can use this link. It's anonymous, the survey, and I do have a look and I do take on board your feedback every single time. I'll give you a minute. Okay, so we've got a careers Q&A next Wednesday. We've got a thesis by publication workshop next Wednesday as well. HDR Writers Wellbeing Lounge on November 3rd. That's a hybrid one, so in person and Zoom as well, where you do your writing sprints. You can get those messy drafts going. Don't forget, you find out about everything we've got coming up when you get your HDR Matters emails on a Monday. Everything's up on Blackboard. Go to HiQ for all of the workshops and writing circles and sessions. Okay, we're done. We're up to our Q&A. I would love if you've got any comments, if you've got any questions, if you just want to let me know that you're at an exciting point in your research. Happy to hear from you. Okay, thank you everyone for coming along and attending the workshop, and good luck with all of your writing and your research. Bye for now.